21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
What's the basic difference between being startup in Canada and being startup in USA or the rest of the world?
I can't tell really for the rest of Canada, but here in Montreal, we have a really good startup ecosystem. So we do get a lot of money from the government. We get a lot of grants. We get a lot of support. There's some amazing local organizations such as PME Montreal, which means a small to medium-sized enterprise Montreal. And they gave us so much support. They gave us so many grants at the beginning of the business. That really helped us out to start the business, because without those grants, we would never, been able to start. But I think that's the good part. But the bad part is that when you want to do a buyout, so when let's say you want to sell the company, there's a lot less equity here in Montreal and Quebec than there is in the United States. So if everyone wants to sell the company, and I'm not saying that we want to, because things are going really well, but it would be much harder to sell it here in Quebec for the amount that we would want to than, let's say, New York, California, or Florida, where there's really more of a VC culture and a lot more equity for sure than here in Quebec. The other factors, of course, the people who work for us, if you are in the United States, you have a much better chance recruiting somebody from, let's say, Stanford, or let's say the most prestigious schools in California or Florida. Here in Canada, of course, the schools don't have such prestige, let's say, than in the United States, but we are very happy of our recruiting force, and because of that, the salaries, of course, are not as big as they would be in the United States. Yeah.
What's the life cycle, typical life cycle in Canada versus the States?
So in Canada, and right now, it's hard to say to generalize to all businesses, but what I see is that, in Canada, there's not this type of mentality where, like, I'm going to build a business and within 1 or 2 years, I'm going to sell it to a VC and retire on a beach. Here, it's more like, okay, I'm going to start a business and grow with it and maybe even retire with it and give it to my children. Whereas in the United States, I feel it's more like, because, all the startup movies and all these people in TikTok, Instagram, they're like, okay, build fast and sell even faster. I feel like that culture is much more present in the United States than in Canada, especially here in Montreal. In Montreal, we have something called Born for Little Bread, which in English doesn't sound that good. It's called in French, Né pour un petit pain. So it's like we have a very strong Catholic background. So it's like, we don't really like to talk about money. We don't really, if nobody talks about their salaries at parties or et cetera, I know in the United States, like, first thing you do when you meet somebody, it's almost like, hey, how much do you make? Whereas here is like, hey, what do you do for a living? So it's not, working to become rich or building a company to become rich is not the main goal here. Whereas in the United States, I feel that's much more present. So as soon as you start the business, you already thinking about the exit. Whereas here, that's not really the main focus.
Is there any difference between Canada and the States in full-time versus VAs ratio?
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I feel like in the United States, they have integrated that much more, the VA system, whereas here in Canada, especially in Montreal, it's much more like full-time employees that work from the office. But of course, the pandemic has accelerated a lot in the culture in Canada, and we are seeing much more people who are VA, the offers from the EVA has become much more professionalized in the past years. We see amazing services that come from the Philippines, India, that before kind of seemed, a bit to use a nice term, a bit sketchy, whereas now it's super professional, and it seems like you can't even notice that there's a difference between a Filipino company and an American company. The only difference is really the price. The quality of the website is the same, the quality of the emails are the same that they send, and the quality of the work that they do is the same. It's really just the price that's difference. And I see that being a huge problem for a lot of people who don't have that much education or that don't have a high value job. I don't see what would be the advantage for, let's say, somebody who just does copy, who would be not in the Philippines. Why would you want to hire somebody at half of the price with no social advantages, etc.? It's a hard question to answer for sure.
And what's the engagement situation in Canada? Is it low, high?
It's really hard to answer because the pandemic has really changed the game. So working from home, obviously, for a lot of different reasons, makes you feel less engaged in your workforce. That is something, sadly, that we, of course, have felt at our job. It is a big difference when you see your colleagues every day and eat with them. And after your job, it's so much easier to say like, hey, do you want to go get an ice cream? Do you want to go for a drink? Whereas when you're at home, you basically are all alone all the time. So you don't feel so integrated in your business. So in the past 2 years, it's been quite hard for that. And we're at our company, we're doing a lot of work to try to re-engage our employees, and it's going pretty well simply because we have a very strong mission, which is to help people who suffer from hyperhidrosis, so excessive sweating. So people who work with us are so excited to be part of this mission, which is so positive and brings amazing change in people's lives. So on our side, we're very lucky. Our employees are very engaged. But of course, I think for every company in Canada, United States, and across the world who had to have employees who work from home, it's been a hard time for the engagement for sure.
When you say it's essential to sell a product that people really need, what do you speak about?
That's a really good question. So basically, just to give you maybe your listeners a bit of background, we sell a machine that treats hyperhidrosis. So that is the scientific term to describe excessive sweating. Basically, the founder of this company, he had excessive sweating on his hands and feet, and he tried everything to find a solution for himself. And because he didn't find any solutions, he said to himself, I'm going to build my own. He got me and another one of his friends to work with him. So we were all the co-founders. And once we found the perfect solution for him, it was like such a moment that changed his life, that we knew that everybody who had that same problem would have the same type of intrinsic well-being when they use the machine. The machine, when it solves a real problem, that's half of the marketing that's done for you. When you have a product or a service that people don't really need, you need to convince them that much more. It's like, there's a saying like, imagine needing to sell some ice or some snow to an Eskimo, something that he really doesn't need. Whereas imagine trying to sell some sunscreen to somebody who's on the beach and it's, let's say 90 Fahrenheit outside. It's much easier to sell that sunscreen than to sell the snow to Eskimo. So that's why it's so essential to make sure that when you're selling your product, when you're offering a service, that is really responding to a real need. Because if not, you will spend a lot of money on Facebook marketing. You will spend a lot of time creating TikToks that nobody are going to watch and that nobody's going to purchase your machine. So save you the time and the money and make sure that your product is really essential.
How do you find out what the real need is?
So in our case, it was kind of easy because our co-founder had this problem. He had excessive sweating on his hands and on his feet. So we actually only fixed the problem that he had. By fixing that problem, then we realized that we could fix the problem of everybody who had excessive sweating. So basically, he had excessive sweating, and we looked at the literature. We saw that 5% of the general population had excessive sweating. And we said to ourselves, okay, this is a big enough market for us to create a career out of it and to help a significant amount of people. And that's when we went ahead. So basically what I would recommend is if you figure out that somebody needs something, you could see what is the percentage of people who have the same needs as him. And from there out, you could create your business like that. The part is analog, of course, is the technology. So we took a technology that was called an iontophoresis device, and we really thought it was the best way to treat excessive sweating. Where we took a leap of faith was in the business model. So instead of selling to doctors, instead of selling via distributors, we said, let's take the solution and sell it directly to the consumer. So we took the leap of faith of the DTC model of an industry. Medical devices are usually very, 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 very conservative. So they only want to sell via distributors, doctors, health clinics, etc. Our leap of faith was saying to ourselves, let's disrupt the business model and go directly to the consumer. And this really has been the great game changer, because nobody in our field was doing Google AdWords. Nobody was doing Facebook ads. So the cost per acquisition online was very, very low. And very quickly, we knew that our leap of faith was the way to go. We were confirmed in our first hypothesis.
What was the biggest challenge you had and how did you solve it?
Wow, that's a good question. So I feel like every week we have a bigger challenge than the week before. When we started the company, it was really to make people believe in our product and in ourselves. We believed in ourselves maybe more than we should have, but nobody wanted to give us any funding. And as a medical device, we needed some fundings to start the business, start production, create the prototypes, etc. So that was really the biggest problem at the beginning, making sure that people believed in our product, in our mission, and in ourselves. Once that happened, we actually figured out that was the easy part. Afterwards, it was all creating the prototype of a machine, getting certified in the USA, getting certified in Europe. All those things took sleepless nights, took weeks and weekends of work. And right now, I think like everybody across the world, of course, there's a supply chain issues that right now is our big problem. But the beautiful thing of having a business for 5 years is realizing that the problems always have a solution. So every time we had a big problem, we thought to ourselves, this is over. The business is over. We can't go forward. And every time we found a solution, and we just became bigger and bigger and bigger. So I think that is, a reminder to myself that every problem has a solution, and finding that solution will only just make you better, smarter, and work in a more efficient way.
What was your most important transformation regarding working in team with your co-founder?
That's a really good question. So basically, we were all working not by ourselves, but we had, all our own little projects, and working together. It was the first time where we really needed to work together as a team and make sure that we were aligned with other people's strategies. So it made us become better communicators. Sometimes it was really hard because you don't always share the same vision as other people, but it made us understand that sometimes 3 heads is much better than 1. You move a bit slower, but you move a lot better and a lot smarter. So those were the things, learning to compromise on your ideas and learning to listen to other people, which is much harder to say than to do. Actively listening is an art. So not just saying, yes, I know what you mean. It's just like really understanding where the person comes from, where his ideas come from. That's really the essential. So yeah, working with other people made us better listeners and much better marketing people and much better strategists.
So what were the most important lessons from the process?
The most important lessons was try your intuitions very quickly. So for us, of course, it was we wanted to use a DTC model, and by using a website that when I look back, I'm like, oh my God, this is so awkward. It's like kind of cringy, but back then it was exactly what we needed simply to test the business model of DTC and trying some Google ads that when we look back, they're really bad, but in fact, at least they allowed us to try this model. And same thing for Google ads. We just put some Google ads out there. We didn't wait to see if it was perfect. We just did it. And very quickly we did some sales. And with those sales, we had money enough to do better tests, to have better content, and just to scale from there.
What is the difference between those, let's call them standard channels like Facebook sales channels back then and now? I mean, now you need approximately $70 for per acquisition, and back then was $5 or $10 or any other changes.
Well, of course, Facebook, the iOS change, that changes everything for not only for us, but for everyone. But the big difference, let's say for Google Ads, is that before we were almost the only people using that sale challenge. Our competitors, of course, they saw that we were doing this. They realized that this was an amazing way to go forward. And then we had some competition on some keywords that we didn't have any competitions before. So those are kind of the big difference. Simply, we were on an untapped market. We're the only people using it. So of course, the cost per acquisition was much lower because of that.
What motivates you and what makes you happy?
And so basically what motivates me in my job, and I'm very, very lucky, is that we help people treat probably one of the most serious problems that they have. So basically people who suffer from excessive sweating are 5 times more, there's a higher rate of being depressed, having severe anxiety, and even suicide attempts. So being able to help them solve the biggest problem that they have, that brings me so much motivation. And even when there's days where I'm not happy, and even when there's days where the sales are not going so well, just reading the reviews of somebody who says, because of you, I was able to hold my wife's hand for the first time without being ashamed. Because of you, I was able to go to a job interview without being stressed. All these little things, when I read them, I'm like, okay, this is worth it. So that is what brings me the most joy, is having this amazing mission. So that is also something that I always talk to with people who are young entrepreneurs. Make sure that you have an offer or a job that you really like, because when there's going to be low days and when the sales are going to be bad, and you're wondering to yourself, why am I doing this? There needs to be a good answer, because if not, you'll want to quit, or you're going to be burned out pretty quick.
Any tips and tricks regarding your mindset, your daily routine for entrepreneurs around the world?
That's a great question as well. So basically, there's this amazing line, I think it's Mike Tyson, that says you could have the most amazing plan, but as soon as you receive the first punch, that's where the real boxing game begins. So we do have a lot of strategies here at Dermadry. We do have a lot of business plans and what we want to do in Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. But afterwards, the war in Ukraine starts. Afterwards, you have all these supply chain issues left and right. You have massive inflation. So it's really, I think what this business has brought me is be as agile as possible. So have a plan, but understand that this plan is rarely going to be met. And the most important part is always to move forward. That is really the most important part. So setting objectives, making sure that even though you don't fulfill these objectives, realizing that at least you're not still at square one, and always not being complacent of what you're doing, but always try to move forward.
Mathieu, in 5 years.
Oh, in 5 years. Okay, so in 5 years, our aim is to become the alternative to deodorants, be in every shell, in every big company such as Costco, Walmart, Amazon, and that when you say Dermadry, you won't be like, hey, what's that? You'll be like, oh, Dermadry, of course, I already have a machine at home. So that is the objective in 5 years.
What are some of your most significant roles in life? As a friend, as a proprietor, as a sportsman, intellectual?
Yeah. Everything is possible. Beforehand, we had this roadmap in front of us. We wanted to do X, Y, Z. Of course, it's always so much harder than the roadmap really is, and it's very easy to get discouraged. But when I look back and I see everything that we accomplished as a company and as an individual, I'm thinking to myself, everything is possible. And the 5, 6, 7, 8 to 10 years, like if I did this with almost no money and with almost no help, now that our company has the money and the terms and the confidence from our business partners, the sky really is the limit. And I think that we could accomplish amazing things. I think that now my goal and my position in the company is to show to other people, to inspire them that everything is possible, and also to show them what are the steps that we need to take to make sure that we accomplish these things. So, now that I did it myself, I need to transmit that knowledge of how to do it and make sure that people understand that even though there's a lot of obstacles along the way, sky really is the limit. If you want to learn more about Dermadry, the anti-sweat device, please go on our website, dermadry.com. DERMADRY.com. If not, we are on TikTok, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. We would love to be able to help you treat your excessive sweating. And I hope that if Dermadry is not the solution for you, please come and talk to us and we'll make sure that we find the correct solution for you.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.